Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're plunging into a really rich and timely source. A recent edition of Business Today magazine, dated July 6, 2025.
Quite a lot in there.
Absolutely. Our mission, really, is to cut through the noise and give you a shortcut to being, well, incredibly well-informed on a whole range of topics.
From the big picture economy down to even some lifestyle bits.
Exactly. Think of it as uncovering the surprising shifts and maybe the hidden drivers behind India's rapid ascent, its booming economy, new policies, corporate changes, and yeah, even insights into daily life.
Should be fascinating.
Get ready to connect some dots.
Yeah.
So let's start with a major pivot in India's economic story. For years, India was known as the world's back office, right? Handling BPO, often routine stuff.
Right, business process outsourcing, mostly administrative tasks, cost saving.
But now there's this powerful narrative about India moving into a new era. High-value creation driven by something called Global Capability Centers, or GCCs. What's really driving this evolution?
Well, what's really remarkable here is the sheer scale and the strategic shift we're seeing with these GCCs. It's not just a small change. It's like a fundamental redefinition of India's role in global business.
Right.
Union Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal, during a recent Europe tour, really hammered this home. He said he had yet to meet someone who doesn't have plans to double their workforce in India within the next 5 years.
Wow. That speaks volumes, doesn't it?
It really does. It shows this huge global confidence in India as a strategic hub, not just a place to cut costs.
So what does that strategic shift actually mean on the ground? Like, what are these GCCs doing now that's different?
Yeah, good question. These aren't your typical BPO centers anymore. Today, GCCs are supporting critical, really cutting-edge functions. Think R&D, IT, complex design work, even core back-end operations.
So way beyond the old BPO model.
Absolutely. It propels India into value-added, innovation-driven work, and the numbers show it. India is the preferred spot, hosting over 1,800 GCCs worldwide.
18.
Yeah, employing 2.1 million professionals and contributing, get this, over 1.5% to India's GDP already.
That's significant.
And it's projected to grow massively over $100 billion by 2030, with maybe more than 2,400 GCCs.
Okay, that's a profound change. What exactly is making India the top choice for these global companies?
Well, it's a mix of things. India's demographic dividend, that huge young population, is key. Plus, supportive government policies and, critically, an immense pool of skilled talent.
Right.
Novo Nordisk GBS, for instance, specifically mentioned India's 100,000 medical doctors and over 2 million STEM graduates every year. That's a massive talent pipeline.
And is there also that China plus one factor people talk about?
Definitely. We're seeing a clear trend, post-COVID especially. Multinationals are actively diversifying their operations beyond just China.
Looking for alternatives, resilience.
Exactly. And India has clearly emerged as the top beneficiary of that strategic shift.
But it sounds like the work itself is much more complex now.
Oh, absolutely. GCCs today manage everything from cloud computing, data engineering, digital transformation, to advanced AI development, global finance operations, product design, R&D.
The whole gamut, really.
Pretty much. It signals that shift from just cost arbitrage, moving work somewhere cheaper, to genuine strategic value creation.
But the cost advantage is still there.
It is, and it's still significant. Per employee costs in Mumbai or Bengaluru are around $33,000 annually. Compare that to about $134,400 in the USA. Still a big difference.
Yeah, huge. And what's interesting is you mentioned this growth isn't just in the big tier 1 cities anymore.
That's right. It's decentralizing. Tier 2 and 3 cities, places like Coimbatore, Jaipur, Vizag, Kochi, Indore, they're gaining strategic relevance.
Why there?
Well, cost advantages again, but also the availability of skilled talent in those regions. We're seeing examples like Cognizant setting up a TechFin center in Gift City, Gandhinagar, or Infinx Healthcare in Madurai.
Spreading the benefit.
Exactly.
Okay, this all sounds incredibly positive, but every big change has challenges, right? What are the hurdles for this booming GCC sector?
You're right to ask. It's not all smooth sailing. Despite the huge talent pool, the sector faces really high attrition. Something like 52% of GCC professionals are actively job hunting.
52%, that's high.
It is, and there's a widening skills gap. A report mentioned only about 42.6% of graduates were actually employable in 2025, lacking technical and, importantly, soft skills.
The soft skills gap, too.
Yeah. And then, of course, you have the global regulatory challenges, data protection, cybersecurity. Those are big concerns. Around 73% of GCCs say security intelligence is a top priority.
So things to watch.
Definitely. Addressing those will be crucial to keep the growth going.
This really shows how India is rapidly becoming a global innovation powerhouse. For you, the listener, understanding these centers is, I think, absolutely key to grasping the future of international business, maybe even your own career path.
And if we connect this GCC boom to the bigger picture, you see how India's overall economic health and strategic investments are, well, foundational. They underpin this kind of growth.
What kind of investments are we talking about?
We're talking massive numbers, $125 billion annually just in infrastructure, aiming for 225 airports, 1,000 gigawatts of energy capacity.
1,000. Wow.
Yeah, and importantly, half of that from green sources. This spending directly fuels domestic demand, right? From a growing middle-class, rapid urbanization. It all connects.
And how is this reflected in corporate performance? Are companies doing well?
Very well, generally. Looking at the Nifty 50 India's top 50 companies, their combined net profit surpassed 2 lakh crore rupees in just the last 2 quarters.
Which is about, what, $24 billion US?
Roughly, yes. And that represents strong year-on-year growth, 13% and 10% respectively. In fact, 4 Nifty 50 firms posted over 100% profit growth year-on-year in Q4 FY25.
Incredible growth for some. Which sectors are leading?
Banking, IT, and crude oil are the big ones. Collectively, they command almost half, 49% of the total Nifty 50 profits. Top performers in terms of profit were ITC, SBI, and Reliance Industries.
So, strong domestic consumption, corporate health. It seems like a robust picture.
It signals that, yes. Resilience.
Okay, this leads us to something really interesting. You mentioned a strategic shift in how the government views public sector undertakings, or PSUs. They're not just trying to sell them off anymore.
Exactly. There's a definite shift. The emphasis now is on value creation, not just generating revenue through sales. They're actively avoiding distressed sales.
So seeing them differently.
Yes. PSUs are increasingly viewed as attractive stocks, maybe even a hedge against market shocks, partly because they distribute, on average, about 10% more dividends than the Nifty 50 companies.
Interesting. So what's the new policy?
There's a new public sector policy. It identifies strategic sectors, think energy, transport, defense, critical minerals, where the government will maintain a presence. But in other sectors, they're encouraging more private participation. That could mean closure, consolidation, or strategic disinvestment. It's about making them more efficient, more valuable overall. Right, a more nuanced approach. Very much so. And this push for efficiency and value brings us to another crucial question. Can India truly become a global manufacturing powerhouse, not just a service hub?
That's the big goal, isn't it?
Yeah.
Moving up the value chain.
It is. The country is actively reworking strategies to boost manufacturing and exports, especially with rising protectionism globally. The aim is ambitious. Account for 10% of global exports by 2047.
Wow. And a key part of that is creating jobs outside agriculture.
Absolutely. Creating adequate employment and shifting workers from agriculture to more productive sectors is a major goal.
And it seems the defense sector is, perhaps surprisingly, a real leader in this Make in India push.
It absolutely is. Indigenous defense production has just exploded, grown 174% from FY15 to FY24.
174%.
Yes, staggering. From about 46,000 crore rupees to over 1.27 lakh crore rupees. This has significantly cut the share of imports and defense buys down to about 35%.
So much more self-reliant.
Much more. And what's more, defense exports have jumped about 34 times since FY14.
34 times.
Yes. From roughly 700 crore rupees to over 23,600 crore rupees in FY25. And about 65% of those exported products are made by the private sector now.
So private companies are really stepping up.
They are. Even global players see it. Boeing, for example, quadrupled its defense imports from India to $1 billion in the last 4 years.
That's a huge vote of confidence. And the government is actively helping private defense companies.
Precisely. They're tweaking procurement policies, favoring competitive bidding more often. They're even letting the private sector bid for things like advanced medium combat aircraft manufacturing.
The clear signal.
A very clear signal of commitment to building a robust indigenous manufacturing base, especially in a critical area like defense.
Now, shifting gears slightly, let's talk about another pivotal sector. Electric vehicles, EVs. India's rolled out a new EV policy, and it sounds like a major strategic play to attract the big global automakers.
It really is a very targeted move.
How is India making itself so attractive for EV investment?
Well, the policy offers customs duty concessions, but they're directly linked to specific commitments. Investment levels, domestic value addition.
It's a quid pro quo.
Exactly. And domestic value addition includes not just manufacturing, but also engineering, R&D, software development, testing, even building charging infrastructure.
So it's about the whole ecosystem.
Right. Approved companies can import completely built units, CBUs, of electric four-wheelers ones, with a minimum CIF value of $35,000 at a much lower 15% customs duty for 5 years.
But there are conditions.
Yes. They have to make a minimum investment of 4,150 crore rupees, and they can only import up to 8,000 units per year under that lower duty.
A calculated carrot, then.
A calculated risk, maybe, to kickstart the premium market and attract investment?
So we know the government is hoping for Tesla. Are other global players interested?
Oh, yes, definitely. Reports suggest players like Mercedes-Benz, Akoda, Volkswagen, Hyundai, Kia, they're all keen to potentially invest under this scheme.
So it's not just about one big name.
No, it indicates broader, diversified interest in India as a future EV manufacturing hub.
And how's the current market leader, Tata Motors, reacting?
They dominate the entry-level EV space, right? About 75% market share.
They do. And according to the magazine, Tata Motors says they're not very perturbed by short-term market share losses in the mid-EV segment.
Why not?
Their view seems to be that the overall market is expanding so rapidly, they're focused on growing the whole pie. Their Harrier EV, for example, is designed to tackle common barriers: price parity, range anxiety, charging speed.
Make EVs more accessible overall.
Exactly. Grow the market for everyone, including themselves.
Okay, let's pivot again. Healthcare. You mentioned earlier how it's scaling rapidly. What's driving that? It's really fascinating. You have this convergence of surging domestic demand, rising incomes, more health awareness, and India's growing appeal as a destination for medical tourism.
Right. Quality care at lower costs.
Precisely. And Max Healthcare is a great example of a company riding this wave. They just recorded their 18th consecutive quarter of year-on-year growth in Q4 FY25.
18th. That's incredible consistency.
Isn't it? Revenue up 29%, EBITDA, that's a key profit measure, up 26%, and profit after tax up 21%. Just solid, sustained growth.
How are they managing that kind of expansion?
Well, they've been very strategic with acquisitions. They bought 3 hospitals last year, which boosted their capacity by nearly 30%.
Right.
And they have big plans, aiming for 6,500 beds by the end of FY26, then 9,000 by calendar year 2028. The overall goal is 10,000 beds through both building new facilities and buying existing ones.
Ambitious targets. What gives them the confidence?
Several things. Strong macroeconomic tailwinds, India's growth story, rising incomes. Then there's that significant advantage in medical tourism cost and skills. And fundamentally, Max seems to have cracked the code on adding capacity at scale effectively.
Right. The operational capability.
Exactly.
Let's talk about a real comeback story now. Suzlon Group, the wind energy company. They went through some tough times, didn't they?
Oh, absolutely. A really challenging period. But this is a compelling turnaround in a sector that's critical for India's energy future.
So what's the headline? How dramatic is the change?
It's truly remarkable. Suzlon went from having 17,500 crore rupees in debt back in 2015.
Huge debt.
Massive. To having 2,000 crore rupees in cash on its balance sheet at the end of this last fiscal year, FY25.
From deep debt to cash positive. How did they do it?
A key part was acquiring Renom, a company specializing in operations and maintenance services, or OMS, for wind farms.
Ah, the service side.
Exactly. That acquisition brought in crucial profit margins and, maybe more importantly, stable, predictable revenue.
How did that change the business mix?
Well, their traditional business, making wind turbine generators, WTGs, still brings in most of the revenue, 76%, but with a, let's say, modest 10% margin.
Okay.
The OMS business, though, only brings in 20% of revenue, but it has a really robust 34% margin.
Much more profitable.
Much more. And it's a service-based annuity business, right? Recurring revenue. This can sustain the company even if the main WTG business, which is quite cyclical, faces downturns.
Makes it much more resilient.
Exactly. The company says they're operating a lot more cautiously now, and they're perfectly positioned to benefit from India's huge renewable energy goals, building 500 gigawatts of renewable capacity by 2030.
From about 227 GW now.
Right. A massive expansion ahead. It's a story of, well, strategic adjustment meeting national ambition.
Okay, so from heavy industry recovery, let's shift to the high-value professional services sector. The magazine highlights both huge potential here, but also some unique challenges, particularly in consulting.
Yes, that's right. Take management consulting. It's a big market in India, about $24 billion. But foreign firms dominate, holding nearly 85% of it.
85%.
Wow. This leads to fragmentation among Indian firms, and it raises interesting questions about what the magazine terms the sovereignty of insight. Are the strategic insights shaping Indian business primarily coming from outside?
Hmm, interesting point. Are there proposed solutions?
The article mentions a couple of ideas, things like regulatory measures to maybe prevent excessive fee-sharing arrangements between local firms and their foreign network partners, and also a proposal for a national consulting skills development program to build up robust local capabilities.
Building domestic strength.
Exactly. Then there's chartered accountancy. The ICAI, the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, is tackling a shortage of CAs.
Okay.
And they're adapting their curriculum quite rapidly every 5 years, potentially even sooner, to make sure it meets what industry actually needs.
Keeping it relevant.
Right. They've also put out draft guidelines on networking, trying to help Indian CA firms scale up and compete globally. And they're working with SEBI, the market regulator, on a white paper about fighting financial fraud, developing early warning systems.
Proactive steps on multiple fronts, then.
Yeah, really focusing on professional excellence and integrity.
This brings us to a really interesting innovation mentioned in education. A new kind of business school aiming high.
Yes, Masters Union. It's relatively new, but it has this incredibly audacious goal to be among the top 10 business schools globally by 2030.
Top 10 globally. That's ambitious. What's their approach?
It's quite different. They focus heavily on practical, hands-on education, fostering entrepreneurship. They're launching new programs in areas like family business management, AI, machine learning, very current topics.
And their model is different too.
Very. They prioritize constantly updating their course content and faculty knowledge over, say, investing heavily in traditional campus real estate. They actually state, building and maintaining campuses is not our core competence.
Interesting focus.
And they operate explicitly as a commercial, profit-generating entity designed to be self-reliant. That's a big shift from the traditional nonprofit model for universities.
A disruptive model, perhaps.
Could be. Now, all this growth and innovation raises a crucial question. How does India balance this rapid economic expansion with its vital climate commitments?
Right, the sustainability angle.
Union Minister Bhupender Yadav highlighted India's leadership in climate action, stressing commitment to meeting goals. And he pointed out something practical. Environmental clearance times for businesses have been drastically cut.
How drastically?
From around 600 days down to just 75 days, using this online portal called Parivesh. That's a huge streamlining.
Wow. Does faster mean less rigorous, though? Or is it just more efficient?
The implication is efficiency, not weaker standards. It seems to be part of a multi-pronged approach. The magazine also covers the first BT India's Most Sustainable Companies Summit.
Okay, what came out of that?
It's a strong emphasis on the need for climate financing from multilateral institutions, and also a clear trend of increasing corporate focus on ESG, environmental, social, and governance compliance.
Are companies actually doing it?
It seems so. Apparently, over 1,200 companies are voluntarily publishing their Business Responsibility and Sustainability Report, the BRSR. That's more than the mandated 1,000.
So going beyond just ticking the box.
It suggests a growing commitment, yeah, driven by policy, but also maybe by corporate responsibility and investor pressure.
Okay, let's unpack another truly remarkable Indian innovation story. UPI, Unified Payments Interface. It's completely changed domestic payments, but now it's going global.
It really is. It's not just dominant in India, it's becoming a blueprint worldwide. The numbers are staggering, nearly 18 billion transactions a month in India alone.
18 billion a month.
A month. And UPI accounted for something like 49% of global real-time digital payment transactions in 2023.
Almost half of the world's real-time payments.
Incredible, isn't it? And Prime Minister Modi is strongly backing its international expansion. It's becoming a kind of digital diplomacy tool.
So for you, the listener, if you're traveling internationally, how does this actually work? Can you use UPI abroad?
Yes, increasingly. UPI Global is already accepted at select merchants in 7 countries, places like Bhutan, France, Mauritius, Nepal, Singapore, Sri Lanka, and the UAE.
Okay, quite a few already.
And when you use it, the payment is deducted from your Indian bank account in rupees. Your bank applies a conversion rate, of course, but it can often be more transparent, potentially cheaper than the sometimes hidden fees you get with traditional credit or debit cards abroad.
Good to know. Anything specific you need to do?
Yeah, just remember to enable the UPI International feature in your banking or payment app before you travel. It's designed to make those cross-border payments pretty frictionless.
Amazing technology. Okay, so far we've dug into the big economic trends, the industry shifts. But the magazine also touches on how these things affect, well, our actual lives. Career, family, even travel.
Right, the human dimension. There's a really compelling insight shared by Santosh Agarwal, the CEO of Paisa Bazaar.
What does she share?
It's about motherhood and career. She talks about advice from her mother-in-law that helped her see motherhood not as some kind of career roadblock, but as an enriching journey.
How so?
That it builds invaluable life skills, patience, resilience, multitasking, skills that ultimately make you a better professional. It's a great perspective, I think, for anyone juggling personal and professional goals.
That these life experiences actually enhance work skills.
Exactly,
Yeah.
rather than detracting from them.
Nice. And for the curious traveler out there, the magazine offers some specific tips for Lisbon, Portugal, little local gems.
Yeah, some nice specifics, like enjoying the sunset over the Tagus River from the terrace bar at the Barato Hotel. Sounds lovely.
Mm,
Or grabbing breakfast or brunch at Amelia Cafe, apparently home to probably the best mimosa in the city.
high praise.
And here's a fun one. Trying unique Portuguese croissants. They're described as being more like a warm, sweet, buttery brioche, apparently. You can find them at a place called Pastelaria O Carica.
Ah, those little local food discoveries are the best part of travel sometimes.
Totally agree.
And finally, for those of us, well, embracing remote work or hybrid models, the magazine touched on home office tech.
Yes, highlighting essentials for productivity. Things like Logitech's work desks, which seem to be integrated setups with HD webcams, noise-canceling headsets, docking stations, everything you need for seamless connection.
Making the home office more professional.
Exactly. And also mentioning their MX Keys combo, the MX Master 3S mouse, which has super precise tracking, and the MX Keys S keyboard with smart backlighting. All designed to make remote work smoother, more productive.
Little things that make a big difference in the workday.
Absolutely.
Wow, what an incredible deep dive that was. From those booming global capability centers, really redefining India's global role,
Yeah, moving way beyond the back office.
to the strategic push in manufacturing and defense, the nuances of corporate performance, that amazing global expansion of UPI. It's just clear India is such a dynamic, fast-evolving landscape.
Indeed. We've seen how different sectors are innovating, adapting, really driving growth. It's backed by policy, yes, but also just sheer human ingenuity and resilience.
Yeah, those stories like Max Healthcare's steady expansion and Suzlon's incredible turnaround really stand out.
They absolutely underscore that resilience and strategic depth that's emerging across the economy.
Well, we hope this deep dive has given you, our listener, a clearer, maybe more nuanced understanding of the forces shaping India's future.
And perhaps even offered a few practical insights, whether it's for your business, your career, or maybe even planning that trip to Lisbon.
So here's a final thought to leave you with. As India continues this really rapid transformation, driven by both huge infrastructure projects and these subtle but significant shifts in professional sectors, how might these internal developments reshape its global partnerships and its influence in the decade to come? Not just in business, but maybe in shaping the very future of how we all work and live.
Lot to think about there.